Dan Mandis here, and want to welcome on into the program from the Heritage Foundation, Hans von Spakovsky. Hans, as always, great to speak to you. And there's so much going on with Donald Trump. And apparently yesterday he did take the stand, and apparently it was a complete train wreck. Can we talk about what exactly happened? What was the big disagreement? I know that the judge in the case, Judge Erdogan, I guess that's his name, and the former president, they really had a lot of aggressive back and forth. And I guess the judge doesn't like that Donald Trump, big surprise here, is a little long-winded.
Well, I'll tell you, this judge has shown day after day after day that he should not be a judge. And this is just the latest. I mean, look, this is a defendant in this case who is up on the stand testifying. And what our Constitution says, what all of the rules that we have developed for court cases over the years are that you have to lean in favor of the defendant to protect the defendant's rights.
Right.
And that means a defendant, if he's going to get up and testify, you should give him the widest latitude to testify about the issues that are at the heart of a case. And yet this judge, who has shown that politically he doesn't like Donald Trump, is trying to do everything he can to cut off his testimony. In fact, he said yesterday, well, he doesn't want to hear the things that Trump is saying. And obviously he also got upset because Trump would every now and then put in a criticism of the court and the judge and the attorney general of the state, which he's got every right to do. But the judge is trying to restrict him, just like the gag orders that he has put in on Trump being able to comment outside the courtroom.
Well, and this is Hans von Spakovsky joining us from the Heritage Foundation, talking about Donald Trump in one of his many court proceedings. This one in New York, where he is accused of overvaluing Mar-a-Lago. And I guess the question, Hans, would be, part of what the president wanted to do is he wanted to really give his defense. And I guess I don't understand. This is not in front of a jury. This is in front of the judge. So it's the judge that will determine the outcome of this case. So I'm trying to figure out why it is the judge doesn't want to hear the former president's defense.
Well, it's because he's a biased judge who made up his mind before the trial even started. Okay. I mean, what else can you say about a judge who actually, before he got this case, was publicly quoted as saying that he hoped Letitia James would get Donald Trump. And remember, the judge determined that Donald Trump was guilty before the trial started. Yep. The only thing this trial is about is not whether Donald Trump is guilty or innocent, but how much in damages he and his family business have to pay. So what does that tell you about this local county judge in Manhattan? I think it tells you everything you need to know about this very biased judge.
Well, and I was regaling people earlier, Hans, with the audio of the Attorney General, Letitia James, and her many, many, many different sound bites where she has been saying that she is going to get Trump, and she literally ran on for Attorney General, this sort of, get Trump platform. But, I'm a layman, clearly. I'm not an attorney. So from your vantage point, are there most legal eagles out there looking at this thing going on with Donald Trump and shaking their heads like you are, seeing that this is a travesty of justice?
Oh, I think a lot of them are. And that's even people who don't like Donald Trump. I mean, look, the ACLU, they're not exactly fans of Donald Trump. Look, they have come out and said, for example, that the gag order that this judge has imposed on Donald Trump, basically saying he can't criticize the court, he can't criticize Letitia James and the prosecutor, that is a fundamental violation of his First Amendment rights. Look, neither the judge nor Letitia James should be on this case. I think what they have done, the statements they have made, are a basic violation of the professional code of conduct that governs lawyers and the ethics rules governing judges. And yet nothing's being done about it. The state bar in New York has not done a thing about Letitia James, what I consider unethical and unprofessional behavior. And the higher courts, the highest court in New York, has done nothing about this judge who is clearly acting unethically in this case.
Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Joining us on the Newsmaker Hotline is Hans von Spakovsky. Donald Trump's day on the stand yesterday in New York, and we're talking about the gag order and how it. I guess the question, Hans, would be this: Trump yesterday in this back and forth with the judge. Do you think this benefits Donald Trump and the overall narrative of what's going on? Or is this just one of those things where if you're a Donald Trump supporter, you get it, and if you're somebody who hates Donald Trump, well, then you have your own opinion, and this just feeds into that opinion?
I think you've assessed the situation exactly right. The one thing that the back and forth does, I think, help Donald Trump with is when he appeals the decision that this judge is going to render against him. I'm sure this judge, look, the whole intent of this, I think very clearly, by both the judge and Letitia James, was it wasn't just to get Donald Trump, but to get as much of his money away from him as possible, because without that money, he can't do the things he does, right? He can't run for office. That's one of the ways of crippling him so that he can't run for office. And look, folks need to understand, I would have this reaction no matter which candidate this was, whether it was a Democrat or a Republican. This kind of lawfare, trying to use the law and the power of the government to go after candidates in these kind of pernicious, frankly, persecutions, it's wrong. And that is what's going on in this New York case. They want to make sure that as much of his wealth as possible is confiscated by the government, because they're hoping that will prevent him from being reelected as president.
Yeah, they're going after, number one, his ability to do business in New York, and number two, this thing is what, $250 million is what they're looking for. So it is insane, to say the least. Let me ask you, there's a lot being made, and as I said earlier, this is all about the accusation that Donald Trump overvalued his properties, specifically Mar-a-Lago. There are no victims in this case. And so this, for a lot of people like yours truly, it seems to me, and from what I've read, the banks aren't complaining. There is no one that was harmed by this. And number two, they got some people out there involved in this. I think is it the judge or whoever it is that said that Mar-a-Lago is only worth $18 million, when in reality it's worth like 80 or 90 million, just depending on who you ask, but certainly not 18 million.
No, in fact, I think local authorities in the county down where Mar-a-Lago is have disputed the judge's assessment. But then, what would this judge know? He's not a real estate appraiser. Why does he think his opinion is better than that of other analysts? But no, this statute that they are using is one of the most bizarre fraud statutes I've seen. Other states don't have this. In other states, in order to charge someone with fraud, you have to show that there was a financial loss, that someone was defrauded and lost money. This New York statute, apparently, you don't have to do that. And that's why this is another sign that they are really trying to go after him, because everybody involved in these deals, particularly the folks who lent the money in the first place, they all got their money paid back and they all made a profit. So what is the issue? Well, the only issue is they don't like Donald Trump, and that's why they're going after him.
Well, and the president tried to read a little disclaimer or something that was on all of the paperwork that he signed with the bank yesterday, and that was one of the things that the judge wouldn't allow him to read. And the president even said, and this is part of the news story, the president even said, let me read this. It will absolutely prove my innocence. And he wanted to read again, sort of like the disclaimer, whatever it is, that he had the bank sign and everybody signed on the paperwork, and the judge wouldn't let him read it.
That's right, because in this case, look, Donald Trump's not a lawyer, but he was correct in his assessment of what that disclaimer does. But obviously the judge doesn't want anything, whether it's the facts or the law, actually interfering with his ability to get Donald Trump.
So where does this go from here, Hans? Because clearly this whole thing is just complete and utter BS, and anybody with half a brain knows it. Where does this go from here? I mean, is it actually a possibility that Trump could lose the ability to, do business in New York and lose the $250 million and actually go to jail? And here's the other question that I would ask is it possible that in any one of these, you've got the classified documents, you've got the overvalued of property, there's a thing going on in Georgia with trying to overturn the election. Is it, in your legal mind, is it possible that Donald Trump will actually do jail time? And could he actually be a president who is either a president elected who is actually running the country behind bars, or is running for president while he's behind bars? I mean, where does this end?
The answer to that is yes and yes. Now, the New York case is a civil case. It's not a criminal case. So they're just trying to take away all his money. But the other cases, the federal cases, the case down in Georgia, those are criminal cases. And if he's convicted, yeah, he could go to jail. That would not prevent him, from a legal standpoint, from continuing to run for office. Although, as you know, they're even trying to prevent that with these, what I consider frivolous lawsuits they have filed, trying to get his name taken off the ballot in multiple states. Look, I don't know how it's possible for somebody to run for president when they're fighting off all these different lawsuits. But he's continuing to do it, so we're just going to have to see what happens. But, being in jail with a criminal conviction does not prevent you from serving as president if you have been elected.
Strange times indeed. Thankfully, we have Hans von Spakovsky to walk us through it all. Hans, as always, thank you very much for joining us.